Putin's already a couple steps ahead of us. We just don't know what they are yet, but we will. And then you'll remember me saying this. So you just keep a sharp eye. In the meantime, I have come across something. You talk about something happening underneath the radar. I've come across something I want to tell you about that could be the most ambitious and disturbing social engineering project ever undertaken by the federal government, excluding Obamacare. But everybody knows about that. And let me begin by asking you if you remember busing from the 1970s. You don't? You don't remember? Okay, you were a baby, but, I mean, you've heard about it? Do you know what it... This is very helpful. It's very helpful. Somebody 60 years old does not know about busing. I'm just kidding. Forced busing in the 1970s was a liberal attempt to integrate the races. And the upshot of it was that white kids were bused in some cases in Boston, and it really erupted in Boston, by the way. White kids were bused in some cases 45 minutes to an hour to all black schools to integrate them, because the liberals thought this was only fair and just. And they thought the civil rights movement wanted integration. Now, Martin Luther King did, but his heirs do not want integration. They want to segregate again after they achieve integration. But again, I'm getting sidetracked. That's a whole other thing. In the 1970s, schools were ordered to bus children into neighborhoods far away in order to achieve racial balance in the schools. Children were roused out of bed an hour before they needed to be in order to ship them off to schools. Now, at the time, it was no different then than it is now. Parents moved into neighborhoods because of the schools. Parents wanted to live relatively close to the school so the kid could walk or whatever, but just be close. The school was the center of the kid's universe 9 months out of the year. And so when the forced busing erupted, there was outrage all over including liberal Boston. But the social architects of the left didn't listen, and they kept at it because they knew best, and they were doing what they thought was necessary to achieve racial balance because they were forcing people to do what people weren't doing of their own volition. People were choosing neighborhoods where they wanted to live, and leftists didn't like the choices they were making. And so they basically used the power of the government to force them. If they didn't want to move, they were going to take their kids to those neighborhood schools. Well, what was happening was that liberals were denying parents the right to determine where their kids attended school, even after they had chosen the neighborhood to live in because of the school. It was dictated, and it ended up being a miserable failure. Okay, let's fast forward to today. Social engineering is on the verge of being imposed on entire neighborhoods, adults and children alike. I want to read a little paragraph here from a document from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD. The agency wants the power to dismantle local zoning so communities have what it considers the right mix of economic, racial, and ethnic diversity. A finding of discriminatory behavior or allegations of discrimination would no longer be necessary. HUD will supply nationally uniform data of what it thinks 1,200 communities should look like. Again, HUD wants the power to dismantle local zoning so communities have what it considers the right mix of, they want to be able to force, HUD wants to be able to force people to move into certain neighborhoods so that there is racial, economic, and ethnic diversity in the neighborhood. Not just bus kids to schools. This is that times 10. What this is nationalizing neighborhoods. What this is central planners imposing their will on where you live, not just where your kids go to school. And it's all being done, of course, for our own good. We do not choose to live in the right places, and therefore we're not properly integrating. And we do not have the right diversity, neighborhood by neighborhood by neighborhood. Now, the elites will not be touched by it. Exactly right. The elites will not be touched by this. And this is all part of their ongoing effort to achieve utopia. Here again, more from HUD. Local governments will have to, quote, take meaningful actions to further the goals identified. If they fail to comply, HUD can cut federal funding. Westchester County, north of New York City, has firsthand experience of what the rest of the nation can expect. HUD has told Westchester County, New York, that any limits on the size, type, height, and density of buildings are restrictive practices. It demands that the county sue its localities over such common zoning regulations, which are not exclusionary by any stretch of the imagination. If HUD can define what constitutes exclusionary practices, then local zoning as it is known today disappears. Apartments, high-rises of whatever else the federal government or developer wants can be built on any block in America. And they're going to seek this diversity, again, by obliterating zoning regulations. Zoning regulations, as you know, are one of the many ways that communities define themselves and achieve what they want and don't want. What was the question? It is neighborhood by government quoted. I'll tell you something else that's not mentioned in the story, but you ever wondered why the regime and the left is so fascinated with mass transit? It's because mass transit limits your mobility. You can only go where mass transit takes you. And who controls the routes? The government controls the routes of mass transit. Buses, subways, trains, you name it. They control it. Those are all government authorities, state, local, or federal, whatever. This is why there's been a push. That's why when I see stories like we had last week about these supposedly really forward-thinking advanced millennials who don't want a car. Yeah, they've hit 16, 20, 22. They don't want a car. It doesn't mean anything to me. That is exactly what these central planners want. And both these things, zoning and mass transit, are also a way to destroy the suburbs, which is another thing that is really high on Obama's list. And there's a guy named Stanley Kurtz at Writer National Review who has written extensively about this. Folks, this is who they are, and you know it. You in this audience know this is who they are. They're not content. You will not live in the right place. You will not work in the right place. You will not meet with the right people. You will not be diverse. You will not take action of your own volition that will challenge the Constitution. They're going to force that on you. And all the while, they will be exempt. HUD's power grab, and this is real, you just haven't heard about it. HUD's power grab is based on the mistaken belief that zoning and discrimination are the same thing. HUD, and all of this is Obama, the Democrats, they run these agencies, they look at zoning as disguised discrimination. If you have a zoning regulation on building characteristic quality or whatever, they think that you're trying to keep poor people out. If you have a zoning regulation against high-rises in your community, you don't want poor people. If you have a zoning regulation on the kind of restaurants that can and cannot be open in your community, you are trying to keep certain people out. And this is what they want to obliterate. Do you live in a place that has that kind of zoning? Do you live in a place where they really, the government, the local government, can determine whether or not, say, a franchisee can open a restaurant? Well, HUD is looking at that as the local government discriminating against minorities. And so they are going to take steps. They're going to try. This has been written about recently in editorials in IBD, Investors Business Daily. It used to be known. It's investors.com. And there was an op-ed last Friday in the Wall Street Journal that offered some disturbing details on how this assault by HUD on local zoning codes has already affected Westchester County. That's where we got the details for that. And it illustrates what the rest of the country can expect. Thomas Sowell, a highly regarded, well-respected, nationally syndicated columnist, brilliant economist. He's at the Hoover Institute in Palo Alto at Stanford. Has even weighed on this. I mean, you can check what he's had to say. It is being commented on, and it is being written about because it is advancing. Sowell wrote in part, only ideologues could devote themselves to crusading against people's efforts to live and associate with other people who share their values and habits. Undaunted by a long history of disasters, when third parties try to mix and match people, blah, 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 blah. Only ideologue. This is why I so wish people could learn ideology and just, wouldn't it be great if everybody, if you just say he's a liberal, that they would know what that meant? Because it's the solution. Because it means something. A liberal, this is what liberal ideologues do. Crusade against people's efforts to live and associate with others who share their values and habits. I got to take a break. We'll be back and continue after this.